to write teases for my segments. Here's my tease for this segment. Up next here, someone on the stage is going carbon neutral. Someone is going to have to best his boss who last year munched on or ate some renewable packaging material. And Diane and I are going to have fun with the Fiat, Francis, and his focus on climate at the end of our segment. So let's get going. This is sustainability and innovation. We've got two innovators here. We also have a leader who's going to talk to us about where many of you, the leaders, need to be taking your innovation next. But I want to start with Eric on the end because Siemens has just made a big announcement. Perhaps you might have seen it in the New York Times the past few days in an op-ed. I'll let you make the news.
Well, we announced that we are going to reduce our carbon footprint by 50% by 2020, and we're going to go totally carbon neutral by 2030. And the reason for doing that, if you take a look, we really believe, I know some of the panels have had different opinions today, but we really believe there's a lot of momentum, especially around carbon pricing around the world. If you take a look, obviously Europe has a system in place, and China just made some big announcements the other day. California has a pricing system, and then we have RGGI in the Northeast. So there's already a lot of activity. There's a big meeting coming up in Paris. We get asked quite a bit by our big customers around the world. You know, Siemens, you've always been a leader in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. You've been a leader in the carbon disclosure. What is it that we can do as a big industrial company? What can we do to really reduce our carbon footprint pretty dramatically? And of course, we have a lot of technologies. We have an environmental technology portfolio that addresses a lot of the issues. And we said, hey, it's really time for us to show some leadership as a large industrial company and come forward and say, we're not just going to set an internal price on carbon. We're going to go and become carbon neutral in the very short term. So that's why we did it.
And what are the challenges? How do you do that, such a large company? How many employees do you have?
We have about 340,000 employees and something like over 300 large manufacturing facilities around the world. So it's going to take, we've already done quite a bit of planning. I think we've reduced our footprint by 20% since 2010. And this is now going to take a much more concerted effort. I think the really interesting thing for us, though, is we think we can do it and make it profitable. And that's the real message out there. We think the payback on this is going to be over the next few years, 5 years. We'll be able to get to halfway there by 2020, investing about $110 million. And that's going to save us another 20 to 30 million for the next 10 years after that. And then the next wave starts after that. So we think it's going to be very profitable for us.
So you'll pay for your investment in 5 years and then start making money. It's 20 million a year on your savings. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right, I want to send it over now to Jeff from Dell. I teed you up because Michael Dell ate the packaging last year. If any of you He did. He chewed on the mushrooms. And I know you've got some innovation. I don't expect you to top that. Like he said to me backstage, you can't top the boss eating mushrooms on the stage.
That's a tough one to follow.
That's a tough one. But you do have some innovation, and that's really important to what you do in your job at Dell.
Yeah, when we think about sustainability and we look at this kind of value chain that's associated with it, and as Eric was talking about, it's doable to really reduce your carbon footprint, and we kind of do it in three different ways. One is around kind of recycle, reuse, and replenish. The other is around innovation, and the other is IT-enabled solutions. And what I have as an example today is an example of some innovation that we've done. And if you will, this is something that appears to be common standard packaging, maybe a paper-based product, corrugated cardboard, but what in fact is some innovation that our packaging engineers came up with, which is wheat straw. And what wheat straw is the byproduct of the wheat harvest. So this is made out of the byproduct of the wheat harvest. It allows us to basically take that straw that's on the ground, essentially process it, and come up with packaging material that performs just like corrugated, while using 40% less energy to produce it, while taking 90% less water to manufacture it, and it provides an additional revenue stream for the farmers, obviously, and believe it or not, it actually cost us less to produce this than standard packaging.
What's not to like?
It gets pretty excited. And then today, we announced earlier this morning another innovation. We're the first in the industry to basically take the excess and scrap of other manufacturing processes around carbon fiber, and we're now working with SABIC in a partnership to take recycled carbon fiber and putting them into our corporate notebooks and our gaming notebooks. So this is actually the top cover of a notebook that is actually made out of recycled carbon fiber that allows us to take that material that was destined for a landfill, save about 1 million pounds a year of it, reuse it inside our product, and actually reduce the carbon footprint to manufacture it by 11%. Excuse me. So when we think of innovation, it's these types of technologies and really pushing the envelope for us to come up with new ways that actually lower our cost while doing a greater good for the planet, and really trying to drive around this sustainability and taking and reducing our carbon footprint.
And it's also a part of Dell's circular economy that you call it.
Exactly. We get caught up in a lot of buzzwords in this industry. The way we tend to look at this is a very pragmatic point of view. The circular economy we talked about and have spoken about is really something that we did last year with some plastics. And we actually were the first to use recycled plastics in our product. We've recycled 4.2 million pounds in the last year of product that, again, was destined to go to the landfill, process it in a way that we can use it in our global products, and use that circular economy to really just reuse the product, save energy, save the processing that goes with it, and quite honestly, save cost. And we tend to look at all of the work that we do around our value chain and making it sustainable in that way. How do we really minimize our footprint? How do we take our knowledge and expertise and put it to greater good? How do we actually make an impact into the planet? How do we drive better outcomes for our customers?
And you work with your suppliers. It's all in on that.
It's oddly enough, we just had our annual supplier conference, our top 200 suppliers 3 weeks ago, and a key component of it is our sustainability and our value chain that goes around that, and how we enlist them for their help. How do we bring their technology and innovation along with ours to do things like this? We didn't do this individually. The carbon fiber, as I mentioned, is with the company SABIC, and we engage our supply base to come up with innovative ideas.
Excellent.
You know, this is really neat because we buy all of our laptops from Dell around the world, so we can count that toward our supply chain target.
Thank you.
There you go. All right. Love it. Wheat straw and last year mushrooms. All right, that is innovative for sure. And a new avenue for farmers. Who would have thunk it 20 years ago, right?
A little over a year ago, who would have thought
A year
of it?
ago.
But 20 years ago, for sure.
For sure. All right, well, Diane, let's bring you into the mix because these guys are about innovation, winning, being first, and being trailblazers and pioneers, and talk about the next frontier of leadership, because that's something that you look into.
Sure is. For those of you who might not know, Environmental Defense Fund has been working to bring practical solutions to environmental problems for almost 50 years now. The last 25 or so, we've been working with companies to help them figure out how to move forward. And I would say there's 3 areas that are really essential. The first, of course, is the innovation and investment. And we've heard here today a lot of really exciting work going on there, whether it's new storage, ways of solar tracking. That's an essential part of what American companies bring to the table. A second piece is these sustainability commitments. Make and meet ambitious sustainability commitments. 10 years ago, Walmart committed to a 20 million megaton reduction of CO2. Siemens' commitment that you made, those are absolutely fantastic. General Mills has made a commitment to reduce their carbon footprint by 28% in the next 5 years. That's all terrific. Making sure you meet it is sometimes challenging. These are not easy problems to solve. And working in collaboration with the supply chain, we've seen have a huge impact. And sometimes pre-competitive cooperation too. Walmart and Target got together earlier this year to talk about how to get some of the toxics out of the products that they sell. They have a common interest in that, and you heard Dan Bartlett talk earlier today about how they're moving that direction. But what I see coming now is something new, and that is that people are asking the question of whether companies are also engaging in the public sphere to talk about the need to solve these problems, the need to have legislation, the need to support regulations. And that can be, I think, a little uncomfortable for some companies. It's not a space, it requires a lot of expertise to dig into it. And being willing to say we need a price on carbon, being willing to say we need to take on these issues is incredibly important. And we do see companies doing that. Right now in the United States, we've got the carbon rules, and a number of companies have stepped up. David Crane at NRG has stepped up to say, we got to do it. Staples stepped up to say, we got to do it. That's fantastic. We're also looking at regulation of methane, and that's out there. You saw someone from Anadarko here earlier today. They've stepped up to help design regulations that are really going to solve the problem and be practical for the companies to implement. We're also seeing a little bit of an emergence, I think, of a spotlight on those companies that are either directly or indirectly through their trade associations taking a real obstructionist point of view and trying to get in the way of some of the rules that we need, whether they're at the federal level in the United States, in other countries, or sometimes at the state level. There's a project that another group, not EDF, has that is aimed at really rating companies by what public policy stances they take. And as the intensity of these issues comes to the fore, I think we'll see more of that.
What companies aren't stepping up? Or just maybe in certain areas, you could say what companies should be stepping up.
I've been really impressed with, as we've worked on oil and gas issues, to have a handful of companies who are willing to get out there and step up. I've mentioned Walmart has been doing a ton of great work. It's always challenging to call out one or two companies because you wonder what's going on there. I can tell you in this rating system that we saw, something as surprising as Comcast showed up as a low-scoring company. So I would encourage people to take a look at your score and figure out what is it that's driving that? What is it that people are not seeing from us? Transparency in our engagement, transparency of the need to solve these problems that might be driving those scores down.
What we like about that is to solve those problems, we believe IT is needed. We think IT is part of the solution. We think big data, we think doing real-time analytics closer to the problem statements or the problem areas is actually an enabler to push companies through, to allow them to achieve their goals. If we look at where the technology has moved, for example, virtualization of servers, which many of these customers out here have been working on that for a decade or better, we're now able to put greater utilization on our servers collectively as an industry and save power, reducing the need for chillers or reducing how much power is needed for a server goes a great distance and really helps companies if you think about what they're trying to accomplish.
Help them be smarter with their energy efficiency.
We believe so.
Well, Eric, I want to ask you about the same thing with the technology, the talk about changes in innovation, sustainability over the past years. What do you think has been the driving force in that for Siemens?
Well, I think if you take a look at innovation in a lot of these technologies, I always like to go back and see what people were talking about. If you come back even to this conference, I think in 2008, what used to be Fortune Green or other conferences around that time, just think of what people were talking about back then. And 5 or 6 years before that, they were talking about the end of oil. And then in 2007, 2008, the big topics of these conferences were biofuels, carbon capture and sequestration, which I guess we have on the agenda for tomorrow, which is good, but even the nuclear renaissance. And Siemens has always been a company that said we need to push forward on all these technologies because we don't know which ones are going to be the big winners. And take a look today, if you take a look at the shift over the last 5 to 10 years, obviously gas replacing a lot of coal, and gas technologies have improved dramatically. The efficiency of gas turbines today is dramatically better than it was 10, 12 years ago. But take a look at renewables, what's happened with wind and solar. We heard some discussion today. Yes, there are subsidies in place, and when the subsidies are in place, you get a lot more wind and solar than in years when you don't. But the innovation around wind has been just tremendous. I mean, we bought, about 10 years ago, we bought a small wind company for, I think, $3 300 million euros. And today we have I think over a 15 billion euro backlog in wind. And you take a look, just in the last 5 years, we've reduced the cost of wind by 50%. 50% in the last 5-6 years. And we're now putting even more technology on the rotors. The hubs are getting bigger, the rotors are getting bigger. We're using a lot more technology to capture more wind. We still think there's a long way to go in terms of proving the efficiency, and we want to make sure it gets to a even more competitive place. Right now, many of the projects that we do in the U.S., wind is competitive with any other technology in those markets, especially if you have a high wind market. And I think solar has a similar story over the last few years. So I think while some of these things are subsidized, the subsidies have also helped us gain some time to really drive down and make these technologies more competitive. So I think we're going to see a lot more innovation there. If I take a look at it, what we're doing in some places, recently with Microsoft, data centers use a lot of energy. And we've been working with Microsoft at one of their data centers and working with a company called Fuel Cell Energy, basically to connect the data center to a biogas waste to energy project. So first zero carbon data center in the country. And that also generates more electricity than it uses, and they sell that back to the water waste plant in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So those are things that weren't happening even a couple of years ago that are now being looked at across that. And of course, if you just take a look at where we are in distributed energy, who would have thought? Electricity demand in this country is still not caught up to where it was at its peak in 2007. So it used to be very easy to project electricity demand. You just do GDP, and it would tell you about what electricity demand. So we're still below that, which shows us energy efficiency is really kicking in. That wasn't just a recession. A big chunk of that was energy efficiency. But now you're also seeing not as many of the big power plants. People can move to more decentralized energy, and a lot of that can be done with renewables or much lower carbon kinds of technology. So I think the innovation across the spectrum has been pretty massive just in the last few years, and we see much more to come.
It's interesting that he pointed out how much we talk about different things at Fortune, Brainstorm, Green, now E. I've been here a few years. Go ahead, Diane.
Sorry. We talk a lot about the subsidies, and there's a lot of focus when people are wondering what is government's role in the subsidies. One thing we see is the technology is out there now to be able to say, I want my house to run on clean energy. I want my house to be talking with the grid. But if you look at the policies around this country, fewer than a couple of million people have access to the right policies that would drive that. So let's say you wanted energy that was dirtier or harder to get to be more expensive, and you wanted the clean stuff to be cheaper. Those kinds of changes in policy can then really enable the technologies that are on the grid or in your home or in your business to make for that clean energy future.
And the technology in IT is actually enabling that. We work with a company called ELM Energy, and they actually are using real-time analytics at the source of energy creation to optimize and balance their power grid. And what it allows them to do is to maximize how much comes from solar, how much comes from wind. So they can actually, in remote places like Abilene, Texas, if you've ever been there, which is a few windmills, or whatever you call them, I call them windmills, and you look at those remote sites, they can actually see a surge in wind, they can see a surge in power generation, and reestablish a network to take advantage of that.
We're going to open it up to questions here in just a minute, so please prepare your questions, because this isn't a conference for the meek. So we look forward to hearing from you guys. And I want to ask you, Diane, as far as other policies you would like to see, what would you like to be to hear from the campaign trail as well, so we push on here?
I think it's really important for in this country for both sides, both parties, to be talking about solutions that make sense from their point of view. We don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all, silver bullet, put it in place, everybody's going to agree to it. But we do think that there can be common agreement that there are real problems this country faces and the world faces, and we ought to be talking about how to solve them. So what we'd like to see is the candidates putting forward ideas on how to solve the problems. I will say that President Xi Jinping, when he was here last week and made the huge announcement about cap and trade for China, I think that really challenged us. I think there's going to be a race for the innovators in this country, the innovators around the world, for who's going to be able to step into the market that could be the biggest market we've ever seen for clean.
All right, are there any questions yet from the audience? Innovation is, please say who you are, even though I know who you are.
Jib Ellison from Blue Sky. Eric, I'm interested, as a large manufacturer going carbon neutral with good economics, what's it going to take for all the world's large manufacturing companies to do so?
Well, I'll just maybe just comment a little bit about what we're doing, what we're talking to a lot of our customers and a lot of our peers. Since the announcement last week, by the way, we've just gotten a huge response from companies and also cities who are looking to be more sustainable. And, you know, I was saying 80-90% of that's been very positive kind of response. I think we're really going to focus on really three things. One is taking a look at our fleet. We have a huge fleet of 45 to 50,000 vehicles around the world, and we've been working to buy more fuel-efficient cars, but now we're going to look at more e-mobility kinds of technologies to try to move even more aggressively that way. We're going to take a look at our 300 big manufacturing facilities, and it's really amazing, as you mentioned, manufacturers. When you look at manufacturing companies today, a lot of the manufacturing, for example, in the U.S., the technology inside of the plants is on average 25 to 30 years old. So you can go into a lot of those plants pretty quickly with new motors, new pumps, things like that, and you can dramatically reduce the energy. So we've been doing that in our own plants, and we're encouraging our customers to do that as well. So I think modernizing and updating, and by the way, when you do that, you can move much more quickly to digital technology, and you can also protect yourself more on the cyber side. So I think there's multiple benefits of doing that. So we're going to be spending a lot of that $110 million over the next few years on really enhancing our plants' technology more. And then, of course, what we're going to source our energy from, we're going to be sourcing it more from distributed power and more using our technologies. And we're going to be looking to partner a lot with companies and cities as we build more of this distributed energy for our own facilities, but also for our customers in the cities and things. So we're going to try to form a lot of partnerships around how we can make that happen. So I think if everyone has that focus on putting in the latest technology, and again, for a lot of these technologies, the economics are there, and interest rates are low right now. I don't know how long they're going to be low, but they're low right now. They're as low as they've been for a long, long time. So it makes these investments pay back much quicker. So
I want to ask you, Jeff, how important is it to a computer maker that you have innovation around sustainability, considering your next buyer base will be the millennials, and then I think the next group is called the independents. They're a different group than the millennials.
And they're both different groups, certainly from the era that I grew up in. I'll tell you, the millennials entering the workforce, this matters. This really matters to them. We have inside our company, actually, to help attract some of that talent base out of the millennials, employee resource groups, and we actually have one around the planet. Thousands of volunteers inside our company who get together, who give their time for environmental projects to improve our company's performance as well as their local communities. So this matters, and if you're to look at the demographic of the ERG, our employee resource group around the planet, it is almost all millennials. It is really a point where they come in and see others of like interest. So being able to have a set of responses like this is hugely important, and then a commitment to it. I mean, for us, it makes good business sense. Our market, like other markets represented here, is very competitive, and not only do you get the benefit of being socially responsible here, we're lowering our cost. We're kind of crafting our supply chain, our logistics network. An example, by being able to reduce the density of our packaging, we're able to put 40% more product in containers. We've now repositioned the supply chain to take advantage of a sea network rather than an air network. So we're consuming less jet fuel, consuming less carbon emission cycles, while lowering our costs and being more competitive in the marketplace. So there's a business reason a customer gets a lower price, and the attractiveness of being able to bring this new group of employees that have They're programmed different. This matters.
Yep. I had the honor of being the first climate correspondent for the Weather Channel, and when I would speak to hostile audiences about that topic, I would just always bring up American ingenuity and win people over that way, because it is about ingenuity and efficiency. Another question from ladies or gentlemen? Anybody? I want to talk to you, Diane, then about my Pope question, because we'll get, where are you? Question? Okay, get to you just a second. The Pope and his fiat kind of won a lot of people over. I was on the air when he announced his encyclical and talked about climate change. Then I interviewed a climate scientist from Texas, and she about jumped out of her chair to have a new passionate voice talking about these things. Where do you see it playing?
I was thrilled to see the Pope visiting here and talking about the importance of climate change, talking about the role of all of us. I think it brings a real moral voice to the table, and I think that will resonate. You know, the panel this morning said it would last a nanosecond, but I think it adds to the debate. What I was watching for, though, when he addressed Congress was how he would talk about markets, because I think this issue of markets, if you read the encyclical, clearly he goes at markets and the role markets play. And what was interesting to me, and I think there's room for common ground from all sides on this, is that he's saying that the markets aren't inherently bad, but that you have to have them designed to meet the social goals. So if we want to address climate change, if we want to do other things, that bringing market tools to help solve that is absolutely essential, but the markets alone aren't going to do that. So it's morals before markets, and I think there's a lot of room for constructive debate on that. So it was great to hear him, inspiring. Yes, Washington will always be Washington, but I think he really added to the debate.
Yeah, I think you did too. He got a lot of airtime, almost as much as Donald Trump from CNN, but not quite.
Now that's amazing, a miracle.
Miracle. Thank you.
Kurt Waltzer, Clean Air Task Force. I have a question about renewables. As renewables expand and their footprint grows, we're going to see an increasing reliance on natural gas that ramps up and down for dispatchable power. But if we're really going to get to zero carbon by mid-century, we're going to need zero carbon dispatchable sources of power generation. So my question to you is, we've seen a lot of success in state policies and federal policies that we've talked about today to move renewables forward. What kind of incentives or innovation policies or innovation practices do we want to encourage to get to that next wedge, the zero carbon dispatchable power?
Who wants that one?
I'll take a crack at it, and then maybe you want to comment as well. I think the model of distributed generation that you were talking about is an essential piece in being able to get to that point, because that means building a grid and building a regulatory system that allows the participation of, if you've got a way to store energy and dispatch it, if you've got a way to generate clean energy, being able to create some competition on the grid. And New York is actually is leading this in looking at what's the full suite of policies it takes to design a system that's going to have those incentives built in, that's going to work in the long term. So New York's doing some great work. California's doing some great work. These are tough problems, and nobody in the world has totally figured them out. I think that a number of groups, including companies, including nonprofits like us, Rocky Mountain Institute, I know they're in the room here today, are helping think this through, and some states are leading the way.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and you're right. We are marrying a lot of gas turbines with renewables now in order to dispatch them. In fact, just in Texas, we just put in a new flex fuel plant, flex plant here to work with renewables. I think the other thing is storage. There's a lot of companies. Storage is probably the number one thing I hear about when I go out and talk to not only startups but big companies. We have a number of initiatives ongoing. That's going to help there. But I think eventually we are going to have to get to a way. If you take a look, if you go back to 2005 and 2010, 2015, today, we're still actually using more fossil fuels than we were even 5 years ago. Now, it's more gas than coal, which is good, but ultimately, even with gas as a transition fuel, eventually we've got to get to a place where we can capture that carbon, and so I think CCS is still going to come back into the forefront as a major topic here in the next few years.
We have just a minute left, so Jeff, I'd like to end with you. Do you have like a dream about some sort of sustainable product that's not quite there yet that you can tease us out with?
Well, if we had a dream, and we've kind of set this as an aspirational target, is how do we build products in the compute space, which have been known to consume energy? How do we build product that it really consumes 80% less energy, while it's built around package that's completely recyclable or compostable, while doing it with 20% less water? We think of that as sort of a footprint of our innovation box that we design in. And when you set those targets, it actually creates the creativity of our designers and our engineers to come up with new ways to solve these problems. And as we've done this in each step, we find ways to ultimately reduce the cost of our products, get them to our customers quicker, and so we get a business product or a business byproduct of that, which for us internally, how we manage, again, the sustainable value chain, it really is business driven. So we set real aggressive business targets, and then we unleash our engineers and designers to come up with new ways to solve the problem.
I hear those millennials want to win. They want to win. Very win-oriented and goal-oriented. I know that's what Dell's about too. Thank you so much, Jeff, Diane, and Eric. Thank my panel. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.